not a better way to start out the day than with 2 elimination matches. We're about to jump into the second one. My name is Rich. I'm going to be your host, and I am joined by Jack and Sours. And, you know, usually right now we would jump straight into predicting that next matchup. But first thing that these lads said when they got up on the desk is they wanted to talk about the team that had no healer that just got eliminated. Jack, how do you feel about it being a useless clash yourself?
Ooh, I feel like I need to be going to China to offer my services to help out there.
Betraying, eh?
Never. I mean, they did really play a one-sided sort of game there, one-sided sort of series. It was kind of like a best of one in many ways, where they had to win that first map. Otherwise, they're really just going to be in a whole heap of trouble. Getting any of those counter picks, having that Black or Cold, which is just basically impossible for them to actually down that second boss. It's very, very deadly.
Yeah, let's take actually a look at the bracket right now. So just in case you are just tuning in, you kind of know where all these teams are. And while we're looking at it right now, obviously it was no healer who just got knocked out. Congratulations to CBA. They will advance to losers round 3. But Sours, you wanted to talk about this squad as well. And when we were actually in the back, we got to watch all of these dungeons actually play out together. We were kind of talking about just how well they were moving through cooldowns and how they were actually trying to win, essentially.
Oh, yeah, definitely. No healer did a really admirable job in all of their dungeons. You see just how perfectly you have to play when you're going to bring this no healer comp. And that first match is incredibly important because you have to get that third map pick to clinch out the victory. They were this close in the first map, and just a couple mistakes, a couple big wipes set them behind just enough that they couldn't clinch the series.
Team No Healer, you're all of our heroes for trying something very unique, and it was really fun to watch. But ultimately, we got to move on to the next series here. It is going to be SHEPI against SKYLINE top, and both of these teams, I think these are kind of the sharks in the lower portion of the bracket right now, and we've had a chance to look at them quite a bit throughout the past 2 days. But start with you, Sours. Which of these teams do you think will actually come out on top?
Of course, SKYLINE top started from the top. Now they're here in the bottom bracket. Right, they've done an incredible job so far. They've performed really well, picked some incredible dungeons. Right, they picked Shara, which is not one of the first map picks. A common thing we've seen from these Chinese teams is they're picking these maps that are going to be a guaranteed first map to go to for the second and third dungeon. But they went to Shara and Seat when it was a 23. They're doing a really incredible job. SHEPI didn't finish either of their 22s. They came back in the lower bracket, did a really good job. But SKYLINE top has this experience in 23s in this tournament. I put my they're the guys I want to see.
Whew, I had to mute my mic there for a second. I didn't see that joke coming. Usually you kind of see it coming a little bit, and you stay composed like Sloot. He tells a bunch of bad jokes, but that one, you take the cake there, Sours. Now, Jack, anything in particular that you predict coming out in this series, composition-wise, or anything like that?
SKYLINE, I definitely will see will be coming out on top there. Like Sours was kind of mentioning, where they were actually playing in a fantastic game when they were going up against SKYLINE. It was just like they were a little bit behind. And kind of seemed like they were in a situation where the opponent, after their big loss started coming when they were going up against opponents that were already just having their best game.
Right, yeah, that is something to think about as well, because we did actually get to look at the bracket and seeing who these teams really did go against. I feel like we're already in this position where SKYLINE D is probably our favorite to take the entire thing for the region, Sours.
Yeah, their gameplay is, they all play perfectly. The double rogues executed well. The Havoc Demon Hunter is doing well. Every single person on that team knows exactly what they need to do to get the bosses done. Like, people aren't trying to pat on trash. The Havoc Demon Hunter is doing his job. The rogues are doing their job. Everything they do is just perfect. I would like to see maybe a Windwalker from them, because the double rogue isn't going to be perfect in every dungeon, and we did see a necrotic pick, which I think is a good counter pick against their team comp. Maybe an explosive pick against them from some other teams, but they've really had a great, strong showing here.
Now we're going to be jumping straight into this one. SKYLINE top versus SHEPI. We had a quick second there to really think about the entire landscape of the tournament. There are some powerhouses in this region that still sit in the upper portion of the bracket. We are going to be jumping back up to that portion of the bracket after this series, but now it's time for this elimination match, and we are going to Karazhan.
Back to Lower Karazhan. The return to Lower Kara here. You've seen, of course, they are getting control of those ads very, very quickly, with both Blood DKs being able to control undead, those mobs. And, again, we were seeing, in the past where we were having Lower Karazhans with the teams that did bring healers. Again, just skipping ahead, not having to worry about the trash there, not too much of the trash, pulling to the left side, getting the trash backs down that they can, and then just having, again, their Holy Paladins, skipping ahead, getting the mass res off for everybody there.
Yeah, so it looks like I don't think either of these teams are going to be doing the res skip. Looks like the Blood DK from SHEPI has ran downstairs, corralled some mobs, and brung them back up, while SKYLINE top has done some other mobs. It looks like 2 deaths, 3 deaths from SKYLINE top. Maybe they do have a res being set up. Perhaps that healer has invis potted ahead, while SHEPI is cleaning up the trash and moving on towards the event. So
yeah, and you're seeing just that extra amount of trash being pulled on one side, whereas the other team is just saying, hey, we are a lot more confident with this. We're able to make sure we're getting this done. And again, being able to have the speed set out of Agrimars is just so nice. And you're just seeing that quick swap out of the gear sets there for the Holy Paladin. He's getting everybody rezzed up. There actually was quite a bit of a delay there, which was kind of maybe some of the cause of when you're looking at like, oh, what were they doing there? The big thing that they were doing was just making sure they're getting the event started. The Opera event, of course, is going to be the Beauty and the Beast. So there was that big delay. That's what you're kind of seeing where everyone was just wiping there, giving them plenty of time to get rezzed after and still waiting for that RP to start.
Yeah, you saw an upper Karazhan yesterday, and you see it here in lower, and a little bit as well in seat, where whenever there's a long RP event going on, you like to see teams do the RP, while then other people will go branch off and clear some trash, and that's what SKYLINE Top has done here as they move into this Opera event.
Yep, it's very important to make sure that if the Opera event has already started, the curtains have already opened. It's very, very important to make sure everyone is going through at the exact same time. So if they did take a little bit more time, for example, to clear extra trash, so the curtains were already open, it'd be very, very key for them to make sure that they all walk through, so that way nobody's getting locked out. But first off, Cyrus, tell me about this boss.
So this boss is, it's going to be troublesome. There's going to be fire everywhere. There's a broom he's going to be chasing after you. You've got to have your head on a swivel, otherwise you're going to get swept away. And this fire is going to be out. There's a nice cauldron here that you can use to clean the fire. Different teams will choose different bosses to kill based on their team comp and what they like.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to see they're actually taking out Luminor, who is, again, dropping all of the different fires. Usually you see, especially in NA, everyone going for Mrs. Cauldrons. Mrs. Cauldrons, of course, is going to be casting any of the little soup sprays there. While they deal tons and tons of single target damage, they also allow you to help clean up the fire. So what do you think about killing Luminor first rather than Mrs. Cauldrons?
I think it's going to really help the Demon Hunter out, as well as maybe the Blood DK if he's wearing a Sefu secret. Having that kick for the Demon Hunter to gain resources from, as well as the ability for these guys to proc their Sefus, is going to allow them to do a lot more damage to these bosses. You see Blues just took a really big hit from that damage here. He's being chased by the broom. He's been disoriented. He's got wings pop, so that's obviously a bad feeling when you've got your cooldowns running and you get disoriented.
Well, it's absolutely horrible feeling there where you're seeing, because they focused on Luminor first, again, you want to make sure that you're not having any of the extra fires that you really want to be dealing with. But again, Bablet is just running free, and it's making so that the Warlock really is, just getting time to dot everything up and then start running for his life.
And so we also see the importance of even the strength of sending ahead a healer there to start the RP, where SHEPI is starting this boss a minute and a half later than SKYLINE Top started the event. It was around a minute 30, a minute 50 or something that SKYLINE Top begun this encounter, and SHEPI wasn't able to pull the boss until that 3-minute mark swung around.
Excellent point. You're also having to see the difference in trash, where they said, hey, we're going to take care of this trash. We're going to make sure we're going through this, and we're not actually going to have that full team wipe. But on the other hand, they're not really getting much of an extra advantage there. And we've seen the differences in trash, for example, when we're looking at like Team No Healer. They did have, that big wipe right after the Opera event, and it caused them to actually have to kind of scramble to get some more mob percentage, and it actually kind of sunk them, really, as we were seeing later into the series, because they weren't able to clinch out that first game.
Yeah, we saw SHEPI even won some games earlier because of deaths, and now SKYLINE Top has got 4 deaths on them over SHEPI, who's had a clean run so far. But that minute and a half difference versus the 20 seconds from the deaths, you have to, it's a trade-off, right? Like, how much is that death worth to the timer versus starting this RP early?
That's right, and you're seeing, of course, SKYLINE Top here taking on Coggleston, the last of the little bosses that you have to be taking out here. He is spawning the little forks. They can be quite deadly. Just important to be able to get all these mobs just brought up in together. The extra cleave that's coming out of these spinning forks can be very, very annoying to deal with, and just putting a lot more stress on the healer then, because you are putting up those bleeds that the Paladin has to manage. But thankfully, Holy Paladin is excellent in this instance.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be interesting to see how SKYLINE Top approaches this next big pool. So you can either do it in 1 or 2 pools, depending on how brave you're feeling. When we saw Team No Healer do this earlier, it appeared that they pulled the trash underneath the stage as well as everything else, and then that caused them to wipe when those fire mobs came out and killed them all. And this cool pull that you see SKYLINE Top doing right here is actually something I saw their friend SKYLINE D practicing over on Doyu, where they go up and pull all those mobs up there that you normally don't pull, and they're gathering everything. It looks like they're going all the way down to the fire. This is an absolutely massive pull. You see some great discipline from the warrior. Hasn't pressed a single button yet. There's no threat on the table. Cooldowns are about to start rolling, and we're going to see these guys doing an absolute insane amount of pump.
What I love what they're doing is they're also being able to have the little spotlights. The spotlights that are allowing so much extra damage to be done if you're standing in them. Absolutely massive damage happening by the warrior here, hitting about 30 million damage, getting everything in together. You have the final curtains. You need to make sure you're standing out of them. Then those mobs are going to be dying, only incurring 1 death so far here. All you have to be dealing with is a little bit of the cast and crew left over. Absolutely phenomenal pull here.
Really beautifully done. Just the Warlock fell, so the major AoE dealers, being that Warrior as well as the Havoc Demon Hunter, are stay alive, are able to clean it up. They're not going to use a battle res here because there's no reason to waste it on this trash. So they'll just give him a nice slow res, probably going to run off ahead and then mass res or
just dropping a pylon. They're saying I'm not even going to waste time getting a res off on you as a healer. I love that as a healer. I'm not going to waste time.
That's style.
I'm dropping a pylon. Let's get it going. We've got work to do.
I'm a fan. SHEPI is here doing this pull now. Looks like they're doing it in 2 as instead of 1. And of course, whenever you can make 2 pulls into 1, it's just that much faster. They're moving in below the stage while SKYLINE top is cleaning up, getting ready to pull the audience. We'd like to see people pull these lantern guys out here, and then they're going to go in and they're going to pull all of these guests and do another huge burst pull.
Very important to remember that it is Necrotics. You are seeing, of course, these DK tanks just trying to step back from these very massive pulls because getting everything in together, and if you're not able to, for example, have Dancing Rune weapon up, you're not having the additional parry, you're just going to be taking so many stacks all at once there. So you're seeing that, they're SKYLINE top here on the left side of your screen is just clearing out the rest of the ushers. They're actually going to be taking, I believe, 4 of the ushers all at once, making sure that they have to be very, very careful, especially if all of the damage is going to get lined up together from those flashlights.
Yeah, so these flashlights are, really dangerous. You got to make sure that you turn your back, otherwise it's going to do bonus damage. They go through walls. Who looks like YD spun a little bit too early, so he took full damage. If you're facing these guys, they're going to hit you really hard. And they like to go through cooldowns and just do a ton of damage to you. SHEPI's looks like they're getting ready to pull all of the attendants in the middle. The DKs run into the center. Here comes the grip. SKYLINE top is doing the exact same pull right now, but they're also 2 pulls ahead of them. They've pulled all of these attendants, and now they're going in the middle.
Yeah, it looks like they're also just not. I guess they're going to be relying. SHEPI, this is relying a lot more on their I-beam damage rather than just any extra kind of cooldowns. Whereas SKYLINE top was waiting maybe for YD's cooldowns, waiting for the rest of the cooldowns that are going to be available for the group. That way they better be able to burn down these trash mobs.
Yeah, so we're going to move towards the next boss in this dungeon. So we'll have to see where they decide to go. People, if you have Lust up around now, maybe you're going to head towards Moroz because he's often considered to be extremely dangerous. Or maybe it looks like SKYLINE top might be headed over to Maiden of Virtue. There's a really nice pull that we see here where teams are going to send their DK to skystep down this entire hallway and do a grip and then a massive AoE pull. And it's executed right. It saves so much time, and it's really beautiful.
You're talking about saving time. You are seeing Team SHEPI here pulling the extra ushers into the rest of the audience there to try to get that extra death. But you are seeing, of course, the tank just taking so much damage. I believe he did actually fall there when he was trying to kite out the rest of the trash pulls. The Necrotic, and he stacked up Necrotic so rapidly because I don't believe that he had Dancing Rune weapon back available to him. So he's instantly getting all these Necrotic stacks. He needs to be able to generate enough threat so that, YD or, again, the Demon Hunter are going to be, they're not going to be ripping off of him. But at the same time, when you're getting so many stacks, you're instantly going into this unhealable phase, and you have to deal with the ticking damage as a healer. And especially because he already propped his Purgatory, it just kind of made sense for him to die and get a quick res.
Yeah, so Purgatory's down, so maybe we might see him go off and die just to get that cooldown back up. Looks like maybe Purgatory is also popped for the other DK. Their whole team is running into the hallway. They didn't pull that much of it. They're going to pull over the doorway, start with the I-beam. It looks like SKYLINE is setting up to do a very similar pull. There goes the Sky Step. Off he goes. They're probably going to LOS now into the Maiden room, and then they'll start clearing this trash.
Yeah, and getting the line of sight off there because there are some of the different archer mobs that can be quite a pain to deal with. And if you're not able to get everything perfectly stacked up together, it can be quite an annoyance. So they're getting everything close enough in together, getting it into that Chaos Nova stun there, making sure they're able to get as much damage off as possible. And then it's really important to watch out for SKYLINE top's Blood DK, making sure that they're able to quickly get all these mobs down. He's staying in for quite a long time, so it's not a huge deal for him to deal with Necrotic. And now they're very well postured to get onto the Maiden of Virtue.
Yeah, having that stun coordination is really good. SKYLINE top has got that Shockwave, they've got that Chaos Nova, they've got the Infernal Stomp, and SHEPI has got the double Chaos Nova as well as the Infernal Stomp. You have to wonder, are these guys watching the stream? Because they've got to know that they're maybe just a little bit behind. Half of a pool, a couple percentages on the boss. They're going to Maiden of Virtue. There's a little bit of damage going out. There's nice kicks for Sefu's procs as well as for resource for the Demon Hunter. You see he's doing a really respectable single target damage right now as they move to the next part of this fight.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing SKYLINE top here. Look at the positioning that you're seeing out of the melee. Everyone has just about a 2 to 4 yard spread here, making sure that they're not going to be hit by any of the cleaving holy bolts that are going to be going out. They have plenty of kicks. They have an entire wealth of kicks, but if one does go through, it will deal some moderate damage to the first player and just deal tons and tons of damage to anyone that is standing a little bit too close. So great positioning on their part.
We saw the Demon Hunter just dip his toes there in these holy ground so that he breaks the stun from him. We saw when No Healer did this earlier, all of their players used an immunity in order to get around that. But perhaps maybe I don't see any bubble cooldowns, but whatever you can use to avoid that stun just allows you to do that much more damage to get through that maiden shield.
It's excellent what they're doing, and you're seeing as they are really having half the group really dipping their toes in, taking that damage. The boss will cast Mass Repentance there, and it will basically just put up Disorient on everybody, but you have to take damage so in order to break it. So everyone's having half the group step in, take damage, and they're able to break the Repentance while the other side is using some immunities, using bubble, things like that. It makes it a lot easier on your healer. That way they can spend a lot more time focusing on the damage. You've seen about 700k, for example, coming out from the Paladin for SKYLINE top. And that's one of the biggest things as a healer when you're in Mythic Plus. You want to make sure that you're able to get as much damage done as possible. Healing is not quite as big of a deal. You want to be doing just as much healing as you absolutely need to in order to keep people topped off. So, for example, you are seeing tons and tons of casts coming out while Beacon of Virtue is going up. Make sure everyone's staying topped off from that extra dot damage. But once that ends, the Paladin goes right back into dealing damage.
Yeah, we saw SHEPI apparently seem to reset this boss right before pulling it, because it was vanished, then it had to appear before they were able to start their pull. So they're a good 40% behind. It appears they're actually doing significantly more single target, so they're actually catching up a little bit. But SKYLINE top has had some really well coordinated large pulls, so hopefully they're pull ahead on trash. This is still neck and neck. This could be anyone's dungeon. SKYLINE top almost clenched a beautiful seat run yesterday, but a wipe on the last boss cost them the game and brought them here to this lower bracket.
And you're seeing, one of the biggest things with SKYLINE top is trying to drill back down onto those fundamentals. I mean, by no means did they play bad during their game against SKYLINE D, but they just got a little bit outplayed there. And, you had such a well-oiled machine in SKYLINE D, running with those double rogues, being able to absolutely annihilate bosses. So, I really think that if SKYLINE top here has something to prove when they want to say, we know you're a little bit behind us. We know that we have a little bit of an advantage here, but we just need to keep on playing our game, making sure that we're doing it as cleanly as possible.
That's right. They've had a whole day back to recuperate their senses and get their head back in the game. And when something like that happens, it could be really demoralizing. But you just have to push through it. And they have an incredible showing right here in this first match. Everything is clean so far. 7 deaths, but 4 of them were to that skip that they did earlier when they were setting up the RP. This looks like a rehearsed team. They're back for round 2. They've got a fire under their belly, and they're doing a really great job.
I mean, you're seeing there they're posturing here to make sure they're getting in position to take down Morose. One of the nicest things, of course, by playing a Paladin on this fight is you are able to deal with the Garrote damage so easily there. With Morose, it always is going to focus the Garrote on the healer first if the healer does not have it. So one of the nice things of playing a Paladin is you're able to use either Blessing of Protection or Divine Shield, your bubble, your own personal bubble, to then remove the Garrote damage right before the next one goes off. Then Morose will recognize that you do not have Garrote on you, and you should as the healer. So then he'll try to reapply it while your Blessing of Protection or, again, your Divine Shield is still active, and then it negates another one. And then you just rinse and repeat with either Blessing of Protection or Divine Shield, whichever one that you hadn't used.
Looks like SKYLINE top is probably waiting for some cooldowns now, clearing just a little bit more trash as SHEPI has just joined them in the room, and SHEPI is pulling absolutely everything. Maybe they're going to pull some of the trash in the middle as well, but we're going to see what SKYLINE D is going to do here. It looks like they might be setting up they've CC'd 2 mobs, so they'll be pulling the boss as well as 2 of his companions, and then we're going to see Lust popped and then some cooldowns start rolling, and we're going to see these 2 ads burned really quickly as this Morose fight is just getting underway.
And one of the most scary things about Morose is just simply going to be the beginning of the boss fight. There's specific kicks, specific, maybe grips on some of the mobs, depending on what week it's going to be, what you really have to be dealing with, watching out for example, for any like empowered arms, making sure they're getting that quick grip there. This is really nice play of them, making sure they're getting crisping down as rapidly as possible. You're going to see the first Garrote did go out on blue, the Holy Paladin for SKYLINE top. Be very interesting in about 10 seconds. There is going to be either the Divine Shield or the Blessing of Protection removing that Garrote right before the next vanish. He will try to Garrote again, and then it takes so much pressure off the healer and really allows him to start pumping out so much more damage.
So you see SKYLINE top has just finished their first mini boss along with Morose, as SHEPI is just pulling it. 75% on Morose versus 100%, and they're also 1 mini boss ahead. As a healer on this fight, what are the classes you have to look out for who takes the most damage from Garrote and who is the least. You have to worry about the least.
Well, one of the things with when you're talking about as a healer, it's not necessarily as a healer as a holy paladin or as any other healer, right? It's interesting to see that blue is actually not taking advantage of Bop or of Divine Shield to actually allow the Garrotes to go onto other targets here. So it is kind of scary to watch, as some of these people can drop very, very rapidly low. Paladin does an excellent job here because once you're able to have a lot of the mobs just taken down, and you only really have to be dealing with Morose, as you're seeing right here, as they're just burning him down. You can get everybody stacked up, you can get everybody into your Light of Dawn healing, and it's not too worrisome. One of the biggest things is just making sure any of the casts that are going off, and like I said, usually it's going to be the very beginning of the boss fight that's going to be most deadly to you. Once you get into this controlled scenario where you're saying, hey, I know everyone is in a safe spot, I know that we're able to just focus on AoE healing alone, it's so much better. But I am still concerned about why they didn't take advantage of the Divine Shield or on the Bop to make sure that the first 2, 3, 4 Garrotes are completely negated.
And now for the players at home who aren't sure why these teams are pulling the boss the way they did with the CC, for each one of these ads that are up alongside each other, they're all going to buff each other, which is going to make them do more damage and cast faster, which makes them a lot scarier. If you bring 100 to this dungeon, you can actually freezing trap one for the entire duration of the fight, but the Ghostbuster traps in here are only going to last until Morose hits 50% when they will break.
And you're seeing 8% here coming in for SKYLINE top onto Morose, and just working on burning this boss so rapidly. But it does look like Team SHEPI is kind of catching up just a little bit here as they are really, really close together in trash, and they're getting Morose down. It seems to be quite a bit faster than SKYLINE top did.
Yeah, so SKYLINE top, we've seen this actually on a couple of the bosses now, where their single target seems to be just a little bit behind the double Demon Hunter comp of SHEPI. The Arms Warrior does an incredible amount of damage on the AoE, and the Warlock's doing quite a bit, but we've seen in some of the previous dungeons, even in the no healer dungeon, we saw, looks like the tank is down for SHEPI. This is absolutely not what you don't want to see. Where's the res? This could be a full wipe. This is absolutely terrible. 15% on the boss. Maybe these Demon Hunters can clutch it out. Maybe, what do you do in this situation?
At this point, you have to look at it. They did have a res available. They just were a little bit too slow to actually react to it, or they just didn't prepare to have the Soulstone, for example, onto the tank. So full wipe coming out for Team SHEPI here, just as we were talking about. They were getting that extra single target damage. They really were seeming to have a little bit of a faster pace, and they weren't really behind that much on trash, but they sure are now.
Absolutely huge pool just executed there from SKYLINE top. Really clean, no deaths at all on that. They're moving into pool attunement. Looks like they pulled all of the trash in this room. 99% kill count. Maybe we did see this bug with 99% previously, so they could have 100% as they move into the pool, the final boss. Well, SHEPI's got to run back, and now they're a full boss behind and a ton of trash.
Huge trash percentage here. And as we're going into Adamant here, the big thing to keep in mind is the different phases you have. When Adamant is on midnight, you will have debuffs going out on every single person in the room. One of them will be a specific ghost that's going to be appearing on you. That is the one that you need to dispel. Otherwise, it's going to basically just wipe your raid, deal tons of damage. You need to be able to burn midnight in order to dismount Adamant at 50% HP. Midnight will then run out and start regenning HP. Adamant, then you need to be just burning as rapidly as possible. Big things here, watching out for any of the charges that are coming out from Midnight, while also dealing with the Mortal Strike for the Blood Decay. You see he is taking advantage of his AMS to make sure that he is not going to be taking that reduced healing. Very, very important to watch out for it.
A really nice positioning also from the Warlock by SKYLINE top in this fight. If you stand far enough away from Adamant, you can actually dodge all of his horses without ever moving an inch. Players like to run in close to mobs, and then you find yourself dodging horses, and all that movement could be a significant DPS loss, and it puts your life at a great risk. And if you stand at the wrong range, the horse could spawn on you and really ruin your day.
And you're seeing a full screen here coming out for SKYLINE top. It is their map to lose here as they are burning down the last of it. Paladin just getting stuck in a corner there and goes down. Very important to get the res off because they do have the debuff coming out. He quickly gets res. They do need to take care of the dispel. They get the dispel off very, very quickly because that ticking damage that comes out when all those debuffs come out can be such a pain. But yeah, in that situation, you need to be able to stand close to the boss. You really need to watch out for these horses that are coming out. Another thing is when you're having to make sure that because you are in such close proximity to Midnight, which is mounted by Adamant will still strike players that are within range. It's very, very important to be able to be quickly react to those heals and stay on your toes just to make sure you're not getting taken out by the horses like Blue did.
That's right. Unlike the Disc Priest, Holy Paladins as well as Resto Druids like to do their damage in melee, so he just happened to be caught between a horse and another horse there, and that spelled the end of his life. But this is also the end of Adaman's life, and then it's just one more horse to fall, and then that will be revenge for Blue, and the dungeon will be Skyline tops.
That's right. There's a burning down Midnight here. There is the Enrage, which is dealing additional damage. You are able to, again, run around the corner here if the damage gets a little bit too high from the stomp there. Run around the corner to get a line of sight, but they don't even need it. They've got wings up for the Paladin, just dealing so much damage, absolutely annihilating Midnight here. Looks like they might be needing that extra little trash percentage. It looks like they will be going up the stairs, make sure they're getting one trash pack down there just to be able to seal out this dungeon. But as you were seeing for Team SHEPI, their tank didn't res, so it's just all on just getting this one trash mob down. And while these can be pretty deadly, all you got to take down is one here.
So SHEPI's hopefully using this time. They maybe choosing a nice map that they can come back and clench game 2 from them. We see each one of these mobs up here is only worth just 1% kill count, which is, so they've just got to kill 1 to end the dungeon, and that is why no healer wasn't able to clench it out earlier. Really great game, excellently done by Skyline top. Excellent dungeon.
Yeah, Skyline top, time to show them the loot, even with those few little mistakes that do come in on the end. I mean, at the beginning of the dungeon, it really looked like we may have an early upset in this series. SHEPI, of course, is that 7th seeded team when we originally got here at the tournament, but Skyline top by the end, they managed to giddy up, pick up a lot of time there, and even with your boy Blue getting stuck in the corner there, being taken out, and them needing to go up and get that 1 additional percent, Jack, they're able to close that one.
That's right, and you saw, throughout most of the dungeon there, their execution was really strong. They had consistent pulls, they were playing cleanly, so the little 1% there, that's really going to be burning them, for example, when they're going into, say, the next series, or even if they get past, this series going on to that winner's bracket there. It's very important that they keep on to this execution. These little simple mistakes, that really was what sunk their opponents there. They just need to make sure they're drilling down and they're playing as consistently as possible.
Those little mistakes could really be the thing that costs them as they move forward, but first, they need to come out on top in this series, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be hopping to a quick break, but when we return, we're going to see Skyline top or SHEPI. Who will be able to take this one? We are seeing Skyline top coming out on top for now, but they have a long road ahead of them, not only in this series, but the entire tournament. It all starts when we return. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are mid-series right now, SKYLINE top versus SHEPI. Now, if you do have the astute eye, you may have caught a very particular detail. The tank from SHEPI seemed to be having issues there. So we want to let you guys know everything that's going on at home. So basically what happened was the tank did encounter a small issue, actually lost power in that player's home, so they weren't able to complete the dungeon. Now, this isn't going to be a remake because every player in this tournament, as they were instructed in their handbook, is going to be responsible for their own internet, power, things like that. This is to ensure that we actually do have the most fair tournament possible, but we're going to take a few moments here to make sure that that player has an opportunity to get back online. But like we said, I just want to reiterate, this first game is not going to be remade, but we're trying to get into the second dungeon of this series to give SHEPI the best chance possible. But I'm excited because that means we get to talk until they actually do sort out these issues right now. And I want to look at both of these teams because, Sours, one of the things that we talked about with SHEPI before we jump to the break is they actually are the 7th seeded team in this tournament. What do you think their best hope is? What is their win condition in this series?
Well, of course, they've got to win the third game as well as the second game. You know, you think about what kind of dungeons that they want to bring their team comp to. We saw that their single target on all these bosses was significantly higher than the Arms Warrior composition out of SKYLINE top. So maybe a nice single target dungeon, perhaps Archway, maybe Halls of Valor, and that might play to their team's strengths. And then you add in some good affixes to that, and then you could clinch out a nice game, and then you just have to play absolutely perfectly in the third game and then take the series.
I also do want to say, obviously, online play, things like this can happen. That's one of the reasons that we're so excited to actually have the first LAN for the MDI coming up very shortly in this season. That's what this is all leading up to. We're basically going to do quite a few weekends here. We have every single region, our 4 regions, figure out the 2 best teams. Those teams end up going to LAN. This is the first week of that. So SHEPI, though, even though they do have this issue, before they actually hit that snag in the road, they looked like they were performing very well, definitely going toe-to-toe with SKYLINE top, which has been a team that's performed against some top teams in this region.
Well, that was the interesting thing we were talking about, and as Cyrus mentioned, the single target damage that they're able to be pumping out, which is so consistent, so excellent that they were going through. And one of the things that they were kind of seeming to be poised for was just being able to kind of a little bit overtake the other teams just by being able to catch up, do the same exact pulls, for example, that you know, Team SKYLINE top was doing, and then just be able to catch up on boss damage, right? So maybe when you see something like a Halls of Valor, you know, that it might be available to them, that way they're going to show like, hey, we're able to get through these mechanics, we're able to play much more cleanly. As you saw, SKYLINE top was actually just kind of having a little bit of errors there, just the very tail end of the instance that ended up consuming so much time.
So that can kind of be like, we're starting to very quickly, as the MDI really does evolve and we start to see more matches, you know, team characteristics start to kind of develop. Are they a team that's very good at getting these massive trash pools and making up time there? Are they a team that's able to melt bosses? Are they somewhere in between? And I think it is fair to say that SHEPI is one of those teams that we are really seeing can just delete bosses, and all of a sudden that's where they make up their time. So do you want to see them going for, maybe not going for massive trash pools, just doing them cleanly and rely on that boss damage?
Yeah, they were doing almost as big trash pools, maybe just a little bit smaller. When they could turn 2 pools into 1, you know, that'll really help just speed everything up. It comes to confidence in the players as well as having a good organized cooldown rotation. You want to call out the first stun, the second stun, and the third stun to maximize the amount of time that the tank can stay in there and do damage before you have to start running away and kiting like you do in these necrotic dungeons.
Now, we already talked about SHEPI quite a bit, but SKYLINE top is going to be leading in this series right now, and already alluded to the fact that they've played against some pretty difficult teams. What has enabled them to be such a powerful force in this region?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is that, you know, their consistency, right? As you're seeing throughout these instances, they have such really, really strong pulls that are able to make sure they're getting the largest trash packs possible. As we were saying, you know, right after the after event, they did bring all of the mobs just backstage, brought them into the pit band there. They're making sure, for example, they're able to get that extra buff out and playing so cleanly. And we were seeing, for example, Team No Healer, they really got burned when they weren't playing as cleanly. They tried to make these big risky pulls, and as a result, it just caused them to consume, you know, an extra 30 seconds to a minute and a half just to be able to get everything else done, just a couple more %.
All right, so now, folks, we've kind of walked through both these teams, how we think that they can actually win in this series. It's an elimination series, so they have to do it here. If they don't, they are no longer in this tournament. The winner of this stays in the losers portion of the bracket. Now, one of the things that changed in this MDI is the way that keys actually do work, right? We're going to have those predetermined affixes. You actually get to pick the map when you are the loser in the series, and then you can also switch things up with that final affix. Now, we talked about maps in particular for SHEPI, some of the things that they may want to go for. Right now, if you were SHEPI, what map would you be trying to lock in, Sours?
I think, of all the maps in this map 2 pool, it's got to be Arcway. The double Demon Hunter single target, and then you get the Warlock with the Enslave on the ad to buff one of those Demon Hunters to do increased damage. They can really kill these bosses extremely fast, and they can also do big enough pools that will maybe not quite as big as SKYLINE top, but just a little bit smaller, and then that extra boss damage can clench out and just speed everything up, and that could be the win.
I also want to follow, because we haven't really had an opportunity. It's one of those beautiful things when you are actually moving this quickly through all the matches. You get to watch a bunch of gameplay, but we don't really get to dive into all of the details about what these compositions are really doing. And we talked about meta before we got here. We talk about meta all the time. That's the reason I'm a Demon Hunter main now. Thank you, Jack. Thank you for carrying me. But the thing is we really kind of expected certain things overall in this tournament. When we talked about meta big picture, right? We expect a lot of Windwalker. We do expect a lot of Warlock, maybe a few Demon Hunters here and there, some Rogues every now and then. What do you actually think about the compositions that we are seeing, in particular double Demon Hunter and then actually having that Warlock? Do you think that this is a strong composition?
Well, yeah. In the other regions, we like to see the Windwalker meta is really popular, and in the Chinese region, the Demon Hunter metamorphosis is the most popular meta. And Warlocks used to also have meta. They don't anymore, but they're still in the meta, and they're doing a really good job. That's the things that China loves to play, and they play it really well. Also what they're doing really good is just the coordination of all the dungeons. These look practiced, they look routed. Teams put in so much time planning out these dungeons, and this how you choose to run through the dungeon is really what determines who comes out on top. If two of the mirror teams come into the dungeon together, but one of the teams has planned a better route, that could be the difference between winning the game.
Exactly, and now we're actually going to hear good prediction. We have everyone back online. We're ready to start moving with this series yet again, and we have heard that map selection. It is going to be Arcway, Jack.
An excellent pick there, like you were talking about, having the faith in getting these bosses down very, very rapidly and having the clean pulls. Interesting when you're talking about, for example, the meta game that was coming up. While there is that difference in meta between China and with Europe, you're really seeing, for the damage dealers. It's really interesting to see just everyone kind of consolidating in on the Blood Decays and on really largely the Holy Pallies, having, that focus there on, the extra benefits you're going to add to the Holy Pallies. And you really will start seeing, the extra defensive capabilities. And while Paladin, for example, is not going to be as clean, for example, as the Druid for most of the Demon Wing skips that we're likely going to be looking for, it still is able to pull it off.
I'm gonna toss you about here, Jack. Usually we try to avoid it, but yeah, you like to talk about healer damage. That is one of the other things we do really need to know. These Holy Paladins can definitely pump out numbers.
And that's one of the biggest things, is they're able to pump it out in a very clean and very safe format. You've kind of two different options when you're playing with your Resto Druid. You're able to take advantage of different legendaries, for example, like Fury of Nature or Lady and the Child, to be able to pump out, for example, damage while you're in bear form, or you're going to be taking Feral Affinity and you're going to be able to do single target damage when you're in cat form. One of the big things though is when you're switching out of those forms, whether you're switching out of bear form, you're losing out on the extra arcane damage from the legendary, right? Or if you're playing Feral Affinity, you're missing out on the extra bleed damage when you're exiting cat form. Paladin's just able to sit there in full plate with Devotion Aura up, deal so much damage, and still be in a safe position to be able to switch between DPS and healing so easily.
Man, I feel dirty even talking about it, but yeah, that really is the big thing with Druids. Actually, sometimes the numbers that they can put out are absolutely insane, but you always do have that small little jump. You have to invest that global, so you can very quickly, from doing damage, fall behind, and then you have to jump back into healing, and then you actually get less damage because you've fallen behind, and it's just this vicious cycle. But please, let's stop talking about healers. Let's talk about the key a little bit more. Ultimately, it is going to be Tyrannical, Raging, and Explosive. That is going to be the key that is locked in once they put their own spin on it. What do you think about Explosive as a selection as well?
I think Explosive is going to be a selection we're going to see a lot of. Luckily, both teams are running the Holy Paladin in this dungeon, so Holy Paladins are really great at stomping out those explosive orbs. And also, talking about Resto Druids earlier, there's a nice skip you can do with Stealth as a Resto Druid in here to get a res to skip a lot of trash. And you can do it as a Holy Paladin with Agrimars and Sefus and an Invis Potion, but it's a lot tighter timing. And so neither of the teams have that Resto Druid though, so we'll see if one of these teams attempts to do this skip. That could save a team a ton of time and put them well in the lead.
That skip is really cheeky though with a Paladin. Do you think that could be one of those moments that we really have to look in this dungeon, because that could be an error that pops up for a squad?
Well, one of the biggest things is ideally, because I believe we're going down the middle route usually on live, we're having either the left or the right opportunity. It just kind of opens up at random, but on the Tournament Realms in this tournament, we are going right down the middle. So they do have the option, and usually you'll see teams kind of default, if they have the Warlock, to go to the left side. That way they're able to grab the Chaos Chaosbringer to deal with, to get that huge damage boost. But as a Paladin, what you have to do is you have to end up actually clearing a lot more of the demon trash to give you enough time to be able to, say, Repentance a mob, proc Sephuz, use your invisibility potion, run around, get into a corner, and then get a mass res out on everybody. Yeah. Because the Demon Wing just takes up so much time and is just incredibly lethal to deal with.
All right, well, with all this said, SHEPI, it looks like they have managed to get a very, very strong map pick for them as a squad, but SKYLINE Top does have a chance to close it out here. What is going to be their best route to success if they want to take SHEPI's map pick?
Well, it's all going to boil down to which bosses you decide to go for, and making sure you maximize the use of that Warlock and Slave on one of those demon ads. I'd like to maybe see YD does play Fury Warrior on live. I would really love to see him play Killing Machine Fury. The damage buff from killing explosive orbs, coupled with that Warlock buff, he could do an absurd amount of damage on these bosses, really melt their health pools down, perhaps even more than this double Demon Hunter squad, right? We'll have to wait and find out.
That would actually be nuts. That's one of those things, like, when you said it, I was just like, whoa, because it's not something that Warriors haven't been something that we've seen nearly as much of as we did in the previous MDI. In the previous MDI, it was like, yeah, jam 2 arms Warriors, just throw stuff on the ground and watch things get pwned. It was beautiful, but the thing is now is that's really not what we're seeing, not at all. And YD's kind of been one of these guys. You even said it yourself. He's kind of an all-star in this region, and he is known for playing Warrior, but Fury, not something that we necessarily expected to see.
Yeah, he is one of the top Fury Warriors over on Warcraft logs, but I have seen him play exclusively arms in these dungeons. I would like to see maybe to mix it up. China has only had a couple of even spec swaps in this whole tournament. Maybe we saw some Arcane Mages go Fire, we saw Marksman Hunter go Beast Mastery, maybe we'll see an Arms Warrior go Fury. We'll have to wait and see.
All right, yeah, that kind of gets me excited for the future weeks as well, because we know we're going to be seeing every region take their own approach to things. But now let's turn our eyes to this elimination match. Who is going to stay in the tournament? Who is going to be going home? All of the players are online. Let's get map number 2 underway.
It was great to see again that we were able to get SHEPI's tank back online and be able to experience this Archway again. Fantastic dungeon and a wealth of choices really that are going to be available to them here.
Yeah, so what's really cool about Archway is there's so many ways that you can go about pulling this dungeon. There's a very good chance that both teams are going to diverge. Looks like SKYLINE Top is doing an absolutely insane first pull here. Where in the world are they going? SHEPI is just going to kill the ghosts as well as the slimes. Look at these guys. Where are they going? This is huge.
At first I thought they were just going to be skipping trash. I was like, oh yeah, he's running, a pretty far distance. But they're actually just doing a colossal death run here. Just being able to get a little bit of extra ground. It's very, very interesting to see this.
Maybe it looks like they've run ahead, perhaps dropped a pylon. They're going to skip all of that trash in the first circle. Normally when you do this dungeon, you don't end up killing that much of that trash in the circle. Looks like SHEPI has wiped.
And the reason you don't is because you're having to deal with the trash. You're having to deal with the explosive. And it's very great to see, because they are having to deal with the extra affix of explosive, they were able to get past all of those mobs before any explosives were actually going to be able to wipe them.
Yeah, it looks like sometimes the failure detection pylon is weird with rezzing. I wonder
they're just watching out for the void zone.
Ah, the void zone. Oh, because yes, it rezzes you at just 1% health. So if you were to take that failure pylon there in that void zone, you're going to find yourself dead again just a second later.
Well, as one of my favorite casters like to say, sometimes you have to go slow to go fast.
Oh, absolutely. Right, and we see SHEPI tried to go really fast at the start. They got absolutely overrun by those explosive orbs. It looks like they've come back through and they've killed a couple of those mobs and they're cleaning it up. SKYLINE Top is further ahead in the dungeon, but of course further behind on the kill count. Looks like they'll be heading to maybe Corsalax. No, it looks like they've changed their minds. They're heading over to Spider Boss first. It's going to be a fun show.
Yeah, and you're seeing activating that Sky Step potion very, very rapidly there. And you're getting all of, again, the mana addicts there, getting them all in together, getting a very, very huge pull just to start it off, getting all their cooldowns popped and ready to go. Usually you'll start seeing them go towards the Spider Wing, go towards Naltira there, because it's very easy going into that boss, clearing out the very small spider area of trash, and then being able to access that Chaosbringer that we are just so fond of in this instance.
And what you can see over here on the damage meter of SKYLINE Top, it looks like the Warlock has been assigned to explosive orb duty. He has done very little damage here on this trash pool, leaving all of the AoE in the hands of the melee comp. His job is to kill those orbs and keep his team alive.
I've been just being able to have that extra ability for, especially with Paladins, being able to stomp those orbs makes it so much easier. And you're also getting that extra damage, like you said, out of the Warlock there. So as you're going into Naltira's room here, you're seeing them pulling all the little adds in together. It will be, actually, Yeah, look, these look like they're taking in all the ads together. It's very concerning to watch out for the explosive there. So you're going to see the Paladin, probably, again, like you said with the Warlock, maybe being able to just take on all these explosives. Doesn't look like we have too many that we have to be dealing with, and they're eliminating them so rapidly before too many spawn.
So we didn't see the Warlock do a lot of damage on the previous pool, but we saw Soul Flame do a ton of damage on that pool. Soul Flame, of course, is going to do damage whenever one of these mobs dies, and it's like a cascading effect of explosions, right? As long as these mobs die slightly delayed from each other, that Soul Flame really will just clear everything out, especially when you have low health mobs like this. It can clear trash really fast. Going into these spiders are really scary. They're going to jump on you. They're going to pin you down. There is no volcanic for these guys to have to deal with, but there are these explosive orbs. Luckily, they do have 2 ranged classes to deal with these explosive orbs, and then it looks like they're going to go ahead and reset the boss first. Maybe they had something in the middle of the room. Looks like there's Death and Decay underneath that spider body, and now they're going to grab a demon buddy and then see who they buff, and he's going to do a ton of damage with this boss.
Yeah, and usually what you see is having, them taking out the smallest of spiders, then running over to take this Chaos Bringer with the Warlock, and then they just take on, the medium-sized spiders there. And they didn't waste any time. They had plenty of damage available to them. They had plenty of the cooldowns just to be able to annihilate those medium spiders. Then you have to be taken out to the Wrathguard. But you are seeing a very, looks like, losing their tank, losing another DPS here for Team SHEPI. Just so much damage when you're pulling these mana guards, or the mana race there. Just so deadly. They're playing a lot more sloppy than SKYLINE top is right now.
This is SHEPI's map pick, so we would expect them to have come into this more practice, but they are on their way to the 43 deaths that we saw from an Arcblade pick last year. Hopefully they won't go that far. Naltira has just been engaged by SKYLINE top. Looks like that buff is on the Demon Hunter, or perhaps it's on the Warrior. It's anyone's guess at this point. The Warrior is doing so much damage. This guy is the all-star of their team. Really incredible player. SHEPI is a little bit behind. Another death from them. Hopefully not too many more. This is, not the kind of play we wanted to see out of SHEPI here.
Not the play we wanted to see, and also not the amount of, the control, the execution that you really want to be seeing. You're seeing SKYLINE top doing an excellent job being able to get rid of the explosive orbs there, making sure they're clearing them out. Team SHEPI on the other side was just not ignoring them in many cases, and now you're seeing as they're getting the wipes, they're actually feeling the full effect of the affix that I believe that they added into the equation, right? They're having to deal with this, and it's just really being such a pain as, again, they haven't even engaged any bosses as SKYLINE top is dealing with Naltira.
Now, a common thing we've seen from a couple of these Chinese teams across the MDI so far is that whenever something doesn't need to be killed, they won't kill it. So if they believe that they have what it takes to heal through that explosive orb, they'll just let it pop off. On Curator, the other day, we saw a ton of sparks from one of these teams, and it was actually, I believe it was Team SHEPI who was the one who let all those sparks go, and the deaths caused by them not killing those sparks added up across the duration of the dungeon and actually ended up costing them that series, and that's what brought them here.
I haven't seen the sparks flying as these teams are competing, but again, one of the things that you have to watch out for is just, some like versus the damage versus the healing meters, at their disposal, right? As a paladin, you may say, oh, well, I'm going to do so much more healing if I'm actually having orbs detonating, but one of the most important things for doing Mythic Plus as a healer is reducing the amount of time you need to actually spend healing and being able to contribute as much damage as possible, especially when you're on single target bosses here. So, making sure that you, as a paladin, are not even having to worry about using Beacon of Virtue, you're not even having to use your Light of Dawns or anything like that. You're able to focus all of your Holy Shocks, if you are able to, for example, on that single target damage, on using it offensively. Important thing to know for Naltira here is that these Blink Strikes, many times are going to be focusing on a range of the first one, but they definitely are always going to be hitting one of the melee on the second one. So making sure, for example, they're able to watch out for that. And again, they have such a huge advantage as Team SHEPI here is just now activating Naltira.
Yeah, so we see this web affix even took the life of the Demon Hunter. They're using, it looks like Demon Hunter is jumping out of there, maybe giving it a dash, maybe giving it that Demon Hunter disengage, and while the Warrior is using Heroic Leap. Of course, this web will connect to 2 players, and it's going to bring them together to the boss, and you have to run far apart from each other, otherwise you're going to end each other's lives, or whoever has less health is going to die first.
Yeah, but you're seeing them getting brought together by the Tangled Web. I really would have liked to see some more markers being put down. We're seeing just 1 or 2 around the room here for SKYLINE top, just to be able to have, generally accepted idea of where, all of the spreads are going to be going for that Tangled Web, because the Tangled Web does bring in 2 players together, and they need to be able to break that chain in order for the damage to stop. So when you have that control, for example, of, say the demonic circle where you're able to instantly port to one area, when for example, the melee are going to be going in absolutely different directions, it makes life so much easier to deal with.
Yeah, so SHEPI's doing a nice job here on Naltira so far, and we're going to see if SKYLINE top is going to set up that skip or not. If the Paladin runs off ahead and these boys die, then we know that there's a nice mass res incoming. SHEPI's doing an excellent job dealing with these spiders, dealing with the boss boss. And something that's also nice to think about with the explosive orb is, as a healer, would you rather kill an explosive orb and get the effective health from killing that orb, or heal through an explosion?
I'd much rather just take one global hit of the Crusader Strike, a Judgment, or maybe even a Holy Shock if I have to. It's one global, takes very, very little time. All you have to be able to do is just focus on your raid frame. Watch on for the nameplates there. Makes things a lot easier. As you're seeing, SKYLINE top here is taking down their Eridar Chaosbringer there, making sure that they are able, of course, to take him out, get him out of the way, and stuff like that. And you are seeing, again, Blue getting ahead. He did use his invisibility potion, and he did bubble along with putting down his failure detection pylon. So everyone is getting ready, posturing there to make sure that they are able to die. He is able to mass res them up that little hill, and it makes it so much easier to be able to skip ahead here. So excellent job here by Blue.
This skip is going to cost them, of course, 5 deaths, but that 25 seconds from that 5 deaths is incredibly worth it for the time it makes up for avoiding all of this trash. There's some incredibly dangerous mobs here. There is even a death coming out of SHEPI on this boss, and a death on a boss is incredibly costly, especially when it's at 43% health. It really slows down the whole thing. Maybe they do not have a B-res charge, so they're going to have to slowly whittle away at it. Really.
And that's one of the disaster scenarios that you see, is when you get in these tyrannical bosses, when you're having a death there, you're just going so much more slowly. And when we're talking about what makes the trash deadly in this team and wing, it's really encapsulated by the trash that they really have to kill, that they're kind of just prepping, they're getting ready for, and they're about to engage with right now. Having to deal with, for example, the Chaosbringer, which you can, of course, enslave by the, thankfully. Having to deal with the Chaosbringer, as long as you're able to enslave it, no problem. But you do have, for example, a Wrathlord that they're dealing with, along with the Seer. The Seer casts 2 abilities. He casts the Eyes and he casts the Prophecies. The Prophecies can be interrupted by using Death Grip and by using Gorfine's Grasp, but the Eye of the Beast there did not get interrupted, but it just deals so much damage if they're not burning it quickly. So thankfully they're not on a fortified, but if that eye had gotten off, it would have dealt so much damage to everybody when it's in that raging position.
Yeah, really well done by the tank there on SKYLINE top. It looks like SHEPI has unfortunately got 3 additional deaths, and they've made the judgment call that they're going to reset the boss and pull it again, get their team back up and give it a fresh start, while SKYLINE top is working one full boss ahead, on 15%, whereas SHEPI's boss is going to be at full health once it resets. This is a boss that does a lot of damage. He's going to do a massive amount of AoE damage when he does his stomp. Would you consider this to be a Pride as boss, or how do you approach Zakal?
Oh, without a doubt, Zakal is going to be, Pride as boss. It's going to be making sure you're playing as survivable as you can. We are on these 23, so, it does still deal quite a bit of significant damage here, and you always have to watch out, and it's one of the always things I do whenever I'm running through an instance, just being able to communicate when you get to bosses like these, who's going to be needing extra defensives, because Paladin has a wealth of defensives to be able to give out to the group, being able to use Blessing of Protection, because this is going to be physical damage, that you're being able to use Blessing of Sacrifice while you use your own Divine Shield, and also being able to use Aura Mastery with Devotion, or getting that extra 20% damage reduction to everybody in the group, making sure that they're able to survive. It's very, very easy to say, oh, I think I'll be able to survive this. I think I'll have the damage reduction needed, but you really must be as safe as possible here.
Looks like SHEPI decided that they wanted to clear some trash instead of pulling the boss, and they've actually wiped to it. It appears they pulled that Seer as well as the top pack, and then maybe they weren't gripping the explosion, they weren't gripping the eyes. Eyes were going off, damage was going out. The DK fell, followed by his friends, while SKYLINE top is having a great performance here. Zakal on 43%, really clean run. They do have 10 deaths, but of course they did 2 full 5-death team wipes. So this is, in theory, still a perfect run out of SKYLINE top.
Yeah, you're seeing SHEPI hasn't even killed any bosses yet, which means they're not even getting their first checkpoint back from killing the bosses. Important to note, every time you are killing the bosses, you are unlocking that extra checkpoint. They're having to run from the very beginning of the instance to be able to get all the way back to Naltira's room. Then they're going to be engaging with the Chaosbringer to seize that, then take out the Fellblades, deal with that. Just so much extra time on the instance that they picked.
Absolutely. An important part of doing these dungeons that a lot of people don't appreciate is you spend an incredible amount of time simply running from point A to point B, wiping to one of these bosses without a checkpoint, having to run back from the start of the dungeon all the way to the boss. Costs an incredible amount of time. Here we are coming on 12 minutes into the dungeon, haven't engaged the boss because they decided they want this Chaosbringer buff. Well, Zakal is on 7%. YD has died, so he's not executing. They do have 1 B-res charge, but if they're wisely saving it because they may need it later when a boss is on more health. You know, you never want to see a death on a boss, especially when a boss is at high health like we saw earlier for SHEPI. But when it's on low health like this, you know, you make the judgment call. Do we want to pick our friend back up, or do we want to let him sit on the ground and contemplate his decision, and then he'll come back later? Oh, absolutely.
Merciless there. And you're seeing it, like I said, they're at 5%. They might as well just save it. They might as well hold on to it, because at this point, they're racing against themselves, really. They're making sure that they're playing as safely as possible, because, again, this is very early in the dungeon still. They got the first 2 bosses down here, and that is just the biggest thing. Is it's so easy to kind of lose out in some of these mistakes, and we're going to be seeing as they're going to be moving on to, again, Corselac's room. They might even be going past Corselac's room and just go on to Ivanir. Then it becomes more of a focus on getting your group together, making sure that you're getting those kicks, make sure you're getting those interrupts, and we still are going to be having more mobs just very, very high in very, very high in density. So many more explosive orbs to deal with. So again, it's just the focus. You're just making sure you're sticking together, making sure you're just keeping everything planned, stick to the plan there as they are. Look like they're going to be posturing to actually get a really, really big pull here.
So what's exciting here about SKYLINE Top is their signature style so far in these dungeons has been massive AoE pulls. They have a huge cushion of safety here, but looks like they're setting up, waiting for some cooldowns, and then maybe they might even do this massive pull, perhaps even with the boss. They're going to grip all these mobs up. Looks like they're not pulling the boss. They're not feeling that lucky. There's a couple of magic debuffs going out here. A lot of explosive orbs that need to be handled. There's going to be haste bubbles. You've got the buff on the warrior doing insane damage. 40 million arms warrior burst. You know, this is why you bring that arms warrior over that fury warrior. You trade off that AoE for maybe that little bit of utility. Huge damage out of him.
YD, more like yes please. Thank you so much. Huge, huge damage here coming out YD. You're seeing it again for Team SHEPI there, dropping the failure detection pylon, making sure they're getting reses out on everybody. Thankfully, you didn't even have to have the demon hunters even die from that, because they are able to have their double jump and able to avoid adding a little bit extra to the timer. But they're clearing up all the trash here. Looks like they are going to be having their the Chaos Bringer that they're going to be refreshing the enslavement on right before they're going to decide if they want to be pulling Corstalax or get it on their way back.
Yeah, a little bit of arachnophobia out of Team SHEPI here. They've decided to come and kill this Fel Lord as opposed to killing that spider boss. You know, Corstalax is being pulled. It looks like a death right on the start, but luckily you can just drag him out of the room and reset it, and they can have a clean pull on this boss. You know, there's their Chaos Bringer. It looks like he broke free. Maybe something got a little bit out of hand. There's some explosive orbs on the ground. You want to make sure that those don't start exploding. If they're just going to get this guy back under control, they do have the Demon Hunter in prison to see him while they bring the Warlock back alive. While SHEPI hasn't even engaged this boss yet. They're still clearing the trash in front of Zakal. You know, like, what do you do in SHEPI in this situation?
At SHEPI, you really have to look at, you know, the decisions and why they made this pick, and, you know, go back to the plan of like what was going right, what was going wrong for them. You're looking at just how they're preparing for this trash team SHEPI versus SKYLINE Top there. You know, SKYLINE Top wasted no time at all. They dragged all the mobs into the boss, absolutely just annihilated them. And you're seeing that death coming out of the Warlock, and they actually did, for SKYLINE Top, use the battle res there rather than waiting for their Warlock to actually run back. Not sure if I agree with it or not, but again, they wanted to make sure that they're having control of the Chaos Bringer, and at this point, they just feel confident enough that they're able to just take it down, no problem.
Yeah, it appears they've decided to you know, abstain on killing this robot for now. They're going to go clear some more trash and change their mind. Zakal is here on 80%. Luckily have not been any deaths out of SHEPI so far on this guy. There's a couple of big trash pools probably coming out of SKYLINE Top. Maybe we like to see sometimes Death Knights might Skystep Potion and pull every single mob in the room in front of this boss over here on the far right. You know, these huge pulls, these are the style of the MDI. These aren't the kind of things that you do when you're pushing high keys, but when you want to push as fast as possible, sometimes you've got to break the rules and really play out of your comfort zone.
But at this point, I don't think they need to get out of their comfort zone. They just need to make sure they're playing it like they're trying to get the chest done in time, right? You're seeing Team SHEPI here, of course, 50% on Zakal. You know, big thing is they're dropping all the Fel Fishers out of the way. They actually did detonate one. I think that's what had dropped their tank so low a little bit earlier there. But, you know, they're just making sure that they're able to start working on catching up, because when SKYLINE Top, for example, wants to play more aggressively, wants to, you know, for example, get out of their comfort zone. I mean, that's going to be the area, that's going to be the opening SHEPI really needs to be able to get back into this game.
Looks like, for whatever reason, this paladin here has popped a bubble and he's triggered these pillars himself. I don't think I've ever seen a healer do that. Jack, would you ever like to run into these pillars with the bubble on your horse?
I would never like to touch those ever in my life, but maybe it's just going to be, you know, one of the occupational hazards, because the important thing to keep in mind when you're looking at Zakal's room is there will be the patrols that are going to be near where the entrance is going to be to the left. You do have to keep in mind that those patrols do go and walk pretty far into the room, so it's very important just to make sure you're keeping an eye on them and you're not actually moving moving too close to them because you can only keep them CC'd for so long. You know, one of the things we like to be able to do is clear all the trash up to Zakal, or sorry, we get to skip ahead of Zakal, clear the trash that's standing right in front of him, then get a CC out on the patrol. That way you're actually going to stop the patrol, and you give yourself a lot of breathing room when the fight starts, but you always have to stick to that right side like Team SHEPI is right now, because eventually it will break free, and you don't really have the time to just invest in all that maintenance.
And so we did see, unfortunately, the Demon Hunter died during that trash that SKYLINE top was just killing. Those big blueberries there are going to spawn these crystals that do a ton of damage to you. As a melee, you want to kill those as fast as possible, otherwise they're going to end your day early. Those same crystals are going to be on the last boss as well as in the runway. You know, we've seen them take the lives of many unfortunate people throughout the history of the MDI. But SKYLINE top is doing a great job using line of sight here to pull these mobs. Now these worms here can be kicked, of course, but they will not actually move unless you are out of line of sight of them, and then they'll chase you and they'll stack nicely so that you can kill them together.
Yep, and it's nice that you're not even having to, you're able to get all of them up in there together. You are having to deal with the warp shades, which are without a doubt the most deadly, having the phase breach, and also having the reconstitution there. You know, a lot of the focus in this wing just starts focusing on getting as many kicks as possible out on these mobs, making sure they're not healing themselves up to full, and making sure they're not having that huge nuke. So it's it's double form where you want to get the worms and those shades line of sighted to you, because you want to make sure that you're not going to get damaged by the phase breaches as they're casting and moving towards you, and you want to make sure that all the worms are going to get nice and stacked up for you easily.
And I quite like the style actually of the SKYLINE top route here in this dungeon. By going to Ivanir first as opposed to going to that Corsollax robot boss, of course if they do die on the last boss, there is a checkpoint after every boss, so by coming back to Corsollax, they'll actually have a shorter run back in the event of a full team wipe on the last boss, so a little bit of safety out of them, because of course running around in a huge dungeon like the Archway here can consume a large amount of time. As we saw, it cost SHEPI a ton of time when they wiped to that spider earlier, and here they go pulling Ivanir. SHEPI is of course pulling that spider now on 70% versus 100%. There's a couple of scary things you have to look out for on Ivanir. That big triangle will kill Warlock pets, so hopefully it doesn't kill this Chaos Bringer here, because he is there to help these guys out. The buff is looks like on the Arms Warrior. He is the all-star, of course, of this team. We want to make sure that the all-star is being pampered at all times, so that it feels good to be the guy getting the buff, right?
And like you were saying, trying to make sure they're keeping what you will have is, again, 3 points that will form. You want to make sure that they're as small as possible, because when the effect expires, they are going to be forming a line or even a triangle, depending on how much space that you have. So again, they just moved it into the corner, they moved it away from the pet, making sure that they don't even have to worry about it. You are, of course, seeing that volatile energy coming out, the pulsing AoE damage that basically will just put this one big nuke on the team. And again, they're trying to stack up these as best as they possibly can, making sure that they're keeping away from the rest of the group, and make sure keeping them away from the middle of the room, that they have as much room to work with, because again, these little swirlies are going to be popping up on the ground, can be very, very deadly when you're just denying so much of the real estate here.
Yeah, so they've pulled the boss over into a weird spot over here in the corner. He does, of course, teleport into the center. Looks like the Demon Hunter is kicking that as soon as he goes to teleport. You want to make sure that you kick this boss as soon as possible when he teleports in the middle. Otherwise, he's going to gain a stacking buff and do increased damage, but from all of his abilities. And when that buff gets too high, it could just become unsurvivable.
Yep, and you have to see, having to deal with the volatile energies, for example, the magic damage that you constantly be going out there. They are putting them in a very, very awkward position here, as they were trying to make sure they were keeping any of the void zones, for example, onto the edges of the room. In the process, they kind of had to waste a little bit of time for the melee, where they were just not able to quite reach him there. As you see, Team SHEPI is still engaging with Naltira. The very first boss that they had ended up wiping to, they're just trying to make sure that they're staying clean on top of their game, whatever they can, to try to get back into this game, not giving up yet.
Yeah, so really commendable effort from SHEPI. You always want to keep fighting as long as you can. These lines from SKYLINE, this is like really impressive, right? Normally you see these triangles get really out of hand, but every single one they've dropped has been as small as possible. This, of course, has been the only non-line they've dropped from this triple point buff. Ivanir on 19%, Naltira on 10%. We'll see if that Arms Warrior execute, or maybe even that Warlock execute. It looks like they might even pass up Team SHEPI and kill this boss before them.
Yeah, but you've seen just the extra damage that they're able to provide, and again, the death differential. Just SKYLINE top having half of the deaths that Team SHEPI does, and many, many bosses ahead for it. not even taking the extra risk. Like I said, they're actually pretty close together on trash. There was quite a bit extra trash the Team SHEPI did take down. But at this point, SKYLINE's just able to have so much more easier mobs to deal with, so much less of a scare that they really have to worry about. Taking them down these warp shades are very easy to interrupt. They're very easy to deal with there. Taking those down, then they're moving on to Course Lax, and they have a pretty straight shot to take out Melandris and the remaining 40%.
Yeah, so it's important, of course, these mobs here will both cast a Phase Breach, which will do an incredible amount of AoE damage and could kill your entire group. And when they get on 50% health, they will also try to heal back up to full. So it's important to have kicks or stuns for all of that. We do have Demon Hunters, of course, are Blood Elves, so we do have the Blood Elf Silence as well as kicks. And then there's, of course, the Demon Hunter Stun, the Shockwave. So many tools at their disposal for handling all these mechanics. Really great job.
Yeah, but you're seeing there they got the stun on the Chaos Bringer. They do have a timer that the Warlock has. They can only leave they can only enslave the demon for so long. So they're quickly getting the stun out because the Chaos Bringer is not a fan of being enslaved and would just absolutely deck. And we saw it earlier. They will absolutely deck the Warlock if he gets the chance to.
Oh yeah, he's always looking for a chance to bite the hand that feeds him. These guys are going to now engage Corsalax, and we'll see who they like to give these haste bubbles to. If you're a class that really benefits from haste, grabbing these bubbles will increase your damage output by a considerable amount. Looks like, of course, they are going on the warrior again. This will give him increased auto attack speed, so he's going to have even more rage to do more damage. The vacuum is going off from Corsalax. We'll see if they decide to stand in, if they decide to run out. Hopefully nobody dies. We did see the lock gate out of there. Nobody died to that explosion. Really well done. SHEPI is clearing the trash in front of this boss. While it may look like they're quite close, they're a full boss behind, tons of trash behind. Corsalax on 66%, a really clean dungeon from SKYLINE top so far.
Yeah, and you're seeing, of course, they're dealing with the suppression field that is going out. There's a lot of pulsing AoE damage there. Then it's time to find a friend right before the quarantine happens. The quarantine is going to lock one of the players into a crystal. It needs to be clicked as rapidly as possible. Otherwise, it will just absolutely just annihilate their team. So they need to make sure they get rid of that ticking damage very quickly. Having an ally there, clicking on them, releasing them, and letting them just get back to DPSing and burning this boss.
Yeah, it's important to communicate with your team here on this boss and make sure that you find a friend to stand next to and hold their hand when that crystal comes out. You don't want to be caught out alone because the crystal could kill you quite quickly. Luckily, we haven't had that happen yet today. Vacuum's going on for both teams. Of course, the boss percentage is quite different. Corsalax going down quite fast. The Warlock is doing great damage on this. Maybe he's the guy out getting all those far haste buffs. Who knows where that Warlock buff's going. These guys are doing so much damage. Really clean fight from both of these teams. Another Vacuum's coming up, and it's really great. Yeah, and you're just having to focus on just the execute here, making sure they're getting through this. And they do have quite a bit of a differential between, of course, the trash percentage, but there's so much opportunity there. There's so much that they have left to be able to clear out, which should be, taken down in easy order. There isn't too much that they have to be worrying about as they're going through this and being able to set themselves up appropriately for Melandris there. We are been having to deal with it raging and the explosive, but one of the nice things, especially with the composition that we've been having on SKYLINE top, is just being able to rotate through those 3 stuns, making sure that they're able to have Chaos Nova into Shockwave, into the Infernal stun from the Warlock. They're not able to have access, of course, to the Warlock's stun because they are taking care of that Chaos Bringer, but when you're getting just a huge damage buff, you don't even need it. Oh yeah, so now they do have 30% trash that they need to clear before pulling the final boss. So they're gonna, looks like, probably go in and maybe pull this pack to the left, pull some packs in the middle. We're gonna probably see another huge pull out of these guys. Hopefully they don't die to explosives, because the more you pull, of course you'll clear trash really fast, but you do run the risk of spawning a ton of explosive orbs, which could end your pull early. And you're seeing there, you're talking about, they do have tremendous opportunity to be able to get on top of these mobs, to be able to get so many of them up together, but they are going to be running that risk. And there's actually quite a dangerous pack that are getting here with the Forgotten Spirit. They are letting the first couple casts go through just to be able to let the healer just start healing through this, focus on it when they have, the healing up. Then they can start rotating through their kicks and their interrupts, because the boss does, or the large trash mob there in the Forgotten Spirit does enrage. So they're saying, we're going to save all our kicks, we're going to save all our interrupts for this until you enrage. Make sure we're able to deal with it then. That's going to be the hard part, where you're actually wanting to get them out. So it looks like SKYLINE top is now opting, instead of returning to the center of the map, they might head down the left here. Now there is a nice large rat pack that you can pull in the hallway, worth quite a lot of kill count. Cleaning up this trash nice and cleanly. Not too many explosive orbs. They've been quite lucky on spawns so far. The really great AoE from these guys. The Warlock is doing so much damage right now. SHEPI is, of course, clearing trash over to Ivanir. When you're dealing with these mobs, you got to watch out for these lines. You have to watch out for those crystals going off. There are so many things in this dungeon where if you get get overconfident for even a second, it could kill you instantly. Everyone's staying alive, so this is really good moving towards these final 2 bosses.
Yeah, and like you were talking about with the elementals out there, they will be spawning little spirits that are coming up and just pulsing AoE damage. The double melee comps on both sides just need to get out of there, let the range take care of it, then they're able to, or the tank take care of it, and then they're able to get back in. They do not deal too much damage, but they do pack quite a wallop here. As in SKYLINE top, 15% trash remaining. They need to get to about 97, 98% to be able to actually spawn the final boss here and be able to seal out the series.
Yeah, so they're heading back towards the middle. Expect another big pull coming. The DK Sky stepped a little bit early there. Maybe it's going to run out. He's going down here. We'll see how many packs they decide to pull. Looks like maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe perhaps even 3 packs. Hopefully just 2 packs. You don't want to get too many explosive orbs, right?
Yeah, and you see they're dealing with all these explosives as rapidly that they can there. They're actually giving quite a bit that they need to be clear. Now, double are going off. YD going down there. Might be looking to use the battle res. The battle res does go off, but he does instantly go down, and it looks like it will be just quite a wipe here.
So this is what you do have to be careful about when you want to do these big trash pulls, of course, is the explosive orbs can very quickly get out of hand and really end your run. Luckily, they did kill Corsollax as their final mini-boss, or the final, I guess, boss leading up to the final boss. So they do have a much shorter run back to this trash pool than if they had decided to kill Ivanir 4th.
Yeah, but just a very quick run back here as you're able to see they're getting back into position. But yeah, this is what I was kind of talking about, where I was saying, really don't want them to kind of get out of their comfort zone or get any big risks coming up here. Because again, Team SHEPI does need to be able to take down another boss and deal with all of the trash leading up to Ivanir. So it doesn't really seem like there's going to be too much of a point to be able to engage with all of this if they're going to be having to deal with lots of explosive orbs. Maybe it was just because of the fact that he didn't have Gorfian's Grasp, that pull was just a little bit more sloppy. Maybe again, following that age-old adage, making sure they're going slow to go a little bit fast.
Oh, absolutely. SHEPI, of course, didn't heed my advice, and they tried to go a little fast there. They pulled all of the trash in front of Ivanir and line of sighted it, and then the Demon Hunter fell, the Death Knight fell, the whole team fell. They've got just a couple of mobs left to clear up, and then they should have a clean run over to this boss. It will be, of course, their 4th boss, but SKYLINE top has already cleared a 4th boss, and they're moving on to their 5th. Just a couple of percentage left until he spawns, and then it's just that to clench the series and continue their run here at the Mythic Dungeon Invitational.
And that's what we were talking about. SKYLINE top is actually just having quite an impressive performance as we've been going through this, but getting knocked down into the loser's bracket by their sister team, SKYLINE D. And this is one of the things you wanted to see, is just these true teams, these teams that say, hey, we've got something out there to prove. We went against the #1 seed. We lost. We want to be able to get back up there and still go to the LAN later into the summer here. As you're seeing, they're clearing up the last bit of percentage here. The boss is going to be activating once they get to 98%. So they have all the trash that they're going to, I believe they have all the trash that they're going to be needing. Activate the boss and get it down, no problem.
And so SHEPI is just clearing up the last 2 trash mobs before they pull Ivanir. And of course, SKYLINE is just clearing up the last 5 little mobs until they pull the final boss. And then it's just a hop, skip, and a jump away to finish this series out and claim their seed here. Yeah,
and one of the interesting things when looking at Blue playing this palette, he's been playing very, very conservatively. One thing to note about a lot of these mana races, when they die, they do release just a little bit of an interrupt, an AoE interrupt that will lock you out of your spell school that you're currently casting in. And Blue's been playing very, very passively. You're seeing very little damage that's been going out by him as we're engaging with a lot of these mobs. And I do like that he's just kind of making the decision, but on the other hand, I would be interested in seeing if he's going to be pump out, dropping the consecrates, making sure they're kind of speeding up. And that's one of the things, progressing through this is making sure as a healer, you're playing safe, but you're not playing just so passive that you're not going to be able to contribute anything here or there. Just the little extra casts when you're just able to say, hey, I can rely on my Blood DK to heal himself. You want to be able to contribute as much as possible. And now Blue is really turning up the heat here as they are engaging with Advisor Vondros.
Yeah, you have to find that fine line between safety and danger. Really live on the edge. If you play too safe, of course, you will go too slow. And if you play too dangerous and you go too fast, you may find yourself wiping out.
Yeah, it's very interesting as you're seeing the mana bombs going off there. Periodically, of course, during this fight, Advisor Vondros will drop little mines that will explode after a short period of time. And as you've seen, they're trying to make sure they're moving down into just a singular direction around the room, making sure they're dodging that Forgotten Spirit that was patrolling around. And it's very, very important to make sure you're kind of moving in the same direction every single time, that you're leaving all those mines away behind you, making sure that you are not, for example, in that kind of precarious position that they were in where they had the mana bombs going off that would push you back and you need to just run against to avoid the damage or to reduce the damage going out. But make sure you're not running against those bombs, running into mines and being in such danger. So what they're doing here, I really, really like. They're able to, again, be able to run against these and quickly just start moving back because they are on top of just fresh mines. So they do have another 5 or 6 seconds to be able to get out of the way. They're going to start moving back now because those mines are going to be going off, and they're making sure that they're not getting hit by any of them.
Yeah, really great movement out of SKYLINE top here. You know, that's really been the song of all the top teams. You know, we expect to see it in the upcoming regions as well. Really well executed movement is going to be the determining factor between the best teams when it all boils down. They haven't had any trouble so far with Vandros. I don't believe anybody's been hit by these crystals yet. At 50%, which are about to push, here we see Banish in time. They're about to be teleported off into the dungeon. We'll see where they go. A couple of these paths are slower than others. You want to be able to skip these mobs on the run back if at all possible, because they are very dangerous. This is one of the longest run backs that you can get, and I believe they can skip one of the mobs if they get lucky with pathing here. You do need to be careful. You see an incredible amount of damage coming out on these guys from these mobs as they run back towards the boss.
And that's one of the things when you're running with a double melee comp is any of these mobs right here deal tons and tons of damage if you are stepping into that AoE radius there. So you're having, again, 3 members of their group just taking that pulsing damage, but you have to make sure that it's going to be paying off for them because they want to be able to get them down as rapidly as possible there. So it's going to be very, very important just to be able to kill them very, very quickly, and it doesn't look like they're going to be able to skip too many of them, or that they don't really want to be able to skip too many of them. So again, as a healer, you have to be focusing on, you know, if you can skip them or if you have a heavier range composition, having them stand out of range there. But at this point, they can have the longest path they want. They've played so cleanly throughout this dungeon, making sure that they're getting these taken down so rapidly and playing cleanly. You know, this is it. At 50%, they're stepping back into the bubble. They are not banished in time any longer, and the mechanics continue, along with one new one. Tell me about it, Sours.
Yeah, so SHEPI unfortunately had a death there at the very end of Vandros. They're heading back towards the center boss, but they've got a long ways. It is still possible, of course, that SKYLINE could wipe here, which could be the determining factor in the game. You know, that would set them back quite a lot, but there is a huge death differential here in Arcway. We have seen, of course, larger death differentials in the past, but, you know, this is something that they could still, in theory, lose this one, but as long as they play safe and play smart and don't get too ahead of themselves, they should do just fine. SHEPI's about to engage this last boss. They should have kill count, and then it's, you know, it's their game, right?
I mean, you're seeing 28% here left on Advisor Valandros. You are seeing the Unstable Mana going out again on YD. It's going to be pulsing out a little bit of arcane damage just at the feet of the players. They need to keep on running it out. And again, as we've been seeing this theme of constantly running with double melee, they're doing an excellent job making sure they're getting it out of the group, pulsing away from everybody else, not interfering with everybody else's, you know, jobs, getting, you know, all the damage out. And I love that they're just trying to move out around a lot, getting around the room. It might be a little bit inconvenient for the Warlock, but it's just so convenient to make sure that nobody's going to be accidentally falling into any of those little mines there, hitting any of them and just having any little unnecessary deaths.
Yeah, they have a ton of real estate to play with here in Advisor Vandros' room. Just going to do a little bit of ring around the rosy and continue the way around it, making sure to kill explosive orbs whenever possible so that they don't kill them instead. Only 9% is remaining on this boss between them and advancing here in the lower bracket, and it looks like SHEPI, maybe they've running back from the start.
Just a little bit too little too late here. SKYLINE top here, 1% left, taking down Advisor Andros and moving on.
And show me the loop, because SKYLINE top going to be able to do it with a hot 2-0. They deserve some Titan forging going on in that chest that we don't actually see, but I promise you it is there because they downed that dungeon without too much of a problem. I also want to compliment them. We talked about their composition. Obviously, not something we necessarily expect to see be somewhat cookie cutter ever, but the Affliction Warlock, one of these classes that we will see quite a bit in this tournament, really shines there. Even with the amount of movement he needs to do on the last boss, really see that Affliction Warlock pump him.
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, a lot of Affliction Warlocks made it, and this is perhaps one of the only warriors who's made it into this tournament. You know, a lot of people are rolling onto the Windwalkers and the Rogues, and maybe even some Hunters out there. You know, they're showing you play what you feel comfortable at playing, and, you know, build a team around you that knows how to play with you, and then that's how you really exceed in these dungeons.
All right, now, Jack, let's actually talk about SKYLINE top. Obviously, they're able to knock out SHEPI. How do you think they can do in the rest of this tournament?
Well, I think it's just getting back to the fundamentals that we've been seeing. You know, they've kind of just fallen out by the wayside here. That was the thing that kind of knocked them out when they were going up against SKYLINE D. You know, they were going up against the #1 seed. Now they're just trying to make their way out of the losers bracket, trying to fight for their very lives. And I've got a lot of confidence in them because they've been playing, you know, other people's map picks, other more dangerous picks that they're having to deal with, and they're doing such a good job having strong team coordination and really just showing the practice and the time they've invested.
Well, I know one thing about fundamentals, and one thing about fundamentals alone: you can't spell it without fun. And we're gonna have plenty more fun when we return. We got plenty more Mythic dungeons to tear through today when we return.